lesson 2-3 on comparing and ordering rational numbers. So, to compare fractions, which is one type of rational numbers, give them common denominators, then compare the numerators. To compare decimals, annex zeros to make sure that they go to the same place value. Let's look at some examples of those. So let's say that we were looking at comparing two fractions. Which is bigger, 4/9 or 5/12? I need to give them the same denominator. So I'm going to look at 9 and 12, and I need to come up with a least common multiple that they have in common. So the least common multiple of 9 and 12 is 36. I can find that by making the list of all their multiples, doing 9, 18, 36, same thing with 12. Or sometimes when I really get stuck, I end up just multiplying the two numbers together if I'm using a calculator. But in this case, we know it's 36. So I'm going to give both of these fractions a denominator of 36. 9 times what equals 36? Good, 9 times 4. So 4 times 4 equals 16. And 12 times what equals 36? 12 times 3. So 5 times 3 is going to be, now that they have the same denominator, I want to compare numerators. So this one has a numerator of 16, and this one has a numerator of 15. Which one is bigger? Good, this one. So that means that 4/9 is greater than 5/12. And that would be my final answer. That's how I compare. What about if we're talking about decimals? So in the case that I have two decimals, if I have the decimal 0.31 and I have 0.300, and it tells me to compare these two numbers, well, it can be confusing because I could see 31 and say, well, 31 is smaller than 300. So I have to make sure that they have the same amount of place value. This goes to the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. So this needs to go to the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. And I can just annex in a 0 right here to make sure that they're the same. Now I can compare them. 310 to 300. Which one's bigger? Good, this one. And I would write that by saying 0.31 is greater than 0.300. I always write my final answer in the same form that it was given to me in the problem. Now you know what to do when there's fractions. You know what to do when there's decimals. But what happens if I have some fractions, some decimals, some percents maybe even? So when comparing or ordering fractions, percents, and decimals, you must make them the same. They all have to be decimals, or they all have to be fractions, or they all have to be percents. I suggest that you convert to decimals. In my experience, that is the easiest. Finding least common multiples of many numbers and many fractions can be a bit of a pain. So if we go to decimals, it's nice and easy. Here's my problem. Order 5/8, negative 0.37, 1, negative 29/40, and 0.3 from least to greatest. I always want to notice what thing they want first. I can't do it until I make them the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list them in a vertical line. So I went and I listed them all vertically down, and now I'm going to convert them all to decimals. Well, this one's already converted for me, 0.37, negative 0.37. And so is 1, actually. But remember, I want to give it the same amount of decimal spaces. So this is going to become 1.00. And this one is already converted for me, too. I have 0.30. I went to 2 decimal places with all of them. So now, what do I have left? I did that one. I did that one. I have the 5/8 and the negative 29 over 40. 5/8 is a common fraction, and I recommend that you memorize it. I have it memorized. It's 0.625. You also could have divided 5 by 8. And with fractions, you should always get a decimal number. So that's how you know if you did it right. So I'm going to write it since I have it memorized, and I don't even have to do the division, 0.625. Which leaves me with negative 29/40. I have one that I have to divide. So I would come over here and I would do the division for it, or later on we'll be able to use calculators, and I'm going to tell you that right now. This answer is negative 0.725. Because this has 3 and this has 3, what should I do to my other decimals? I'm going to add in those spots. That's so important. Otherwise, I'm going to see 62 and 370, or 62 and 725, and I'm going to think, that's so important. Otherwise, I might totally mix up which one is smaller. So now I'm ready to compare. Okay, and what I'm going to do, it wants least first. So I'm going to look for the smallest number. If I picture my number line, I always want to start all the way over here. What are these numbers? They're negative. So my largest, my biggest negative number is going to be the smallest. So here's my negative. I've got 0.370 and 0.725. Which of those numbers is bigger? So out of my two negative numbers, 725 is my biggest number. So I'm going to start with that, but I'm going to write this one, not that, because that's what my problem gave me. So my smallest one is negative 29 over 40. Okay, and now if it asked me to compare, I would use a less than symbol, but since it just said to order, I'm going to use a comma. What's my next smallest one? And sometimes I just cross those right out. My next smallest one is my other negative number, which was 0.37. Now I'm up to positive numbers. What's my smallest positive number? This one can be deceptive because there's all these zeros here, but don't forget this one's got a whole number. So that's going to be way later on. Whole numbers are always bigger than decimals. So we've got here up 300, which is 0.3. And then we have 5/8. And then last but not least, we have 1. And there we go. Now I have them all ordered from least to greatest. You're ready to get started, so go ahead and get to work.